that I'm going to hiding somewhere by a gated star. Baby, they ain't never gonna find me. I'm a renegade. I could be the one who saved you from this hard place. We could be as one and we'll escape. We could run away, we don't gotta stay. I can feel it, it burns inside me. Take away the pain, we can go insane. I can feel it, it burns inside me. We could run away, we don't gotta stay. I can feel it, it burns inside me. Take away the pain, we can go insane. Trust me, I won't let you down. I won't let you down. Yeah, I won't let you down.
On this episode, I welcome Gautam Shah, founder of Internet of Elephants. Okay, to start off, let's talk about you. Can you introduce yourself, tell us what you do, and where you are located?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Gautam Shah. I'm originally from Chicago, but I currently live in a town called Nanyuki in Kenya, which is basically on the equator, about 3 hours north of Nairobi. And I am the founder of a company called Internet of Elephants, as you said.
Awesome. Okay, so how old were you when you first got interested in animals and conservation?
Well, animals, I mean, from when I was a kid, but I mean, that's probably the same as most kids. And you would know that, right? I mean, like when
Yeah.
you're a kid, everything is animals, all the movies, all your toys, all your clothes, everything's got animals on it. So probably, just like all other kids, even though I lived in Chicago, I lived in a suburb and it was like kind of a woodsy part of the world. So every night we would have raccoons come and we would have deer and we would have opossums and lots of birds and squirrels. And so my sister and I, yeah, we just loved seeing animals, every day. It was just so exciting to have just a raccoon. I know for a lot of people it's not exciting, but for us it was very exciting to have a raccoon just come right up to the window and take peanut butter sandwiches from us. And so I think that's where it really, really kind of started.
Definitely, that's so cool. Okay, so now let's talk about how you combine your love for animals with technology and gaming. Okay, so you quit your job, that what we would assume normal, and you started a tech company to save wildlife. Tell us why.
Well, so I had this amazing love for wildlife, right? And I was lucky as a kid, and my parents took us to a lot of amazing places in the world. And then we actually went on safari. I think when I was about 18. And then we just started doing more and more as a family. And then I started to work for this really large IT company called Accenture. And I mean, I loved what I did, but when I had, all my holiday time or all the kind of the money that they paid me, I used to go on wildlife holidays. So, I mean, that was kind of it for like 20 years, work, take your holidays, take your money, go on what, go and see wildlife all over the world. So I was very, very lucky to be able to do that. But eventually, it all just started to feel very selfish. Like, oh, but who's benefiting from all these wildlife holidays that I'm taking? You know, me. I'm benefiting, and that's great. But isn't there something that I could do that would have a bigger, kind of have a bigger impact and help all the people that make sure that all this wildlife is actually even there for me, for me to see? So I started just feeling very, very selfish about it. And that's where, I mean, I won't get into all the details, but I just started to feel confidence that even though I had a background in IT and I wasn't a biologist and I wasn't a zoologist or anything like that, that there was something that I could do that could contribute back to conservation. And so, yeah, I just was like, okay, I'm quitting. I have no idea what I'm going to do. I thought I was going to go work for a large conservation NGO or something like that. I had no idea. I just quit, and then it took me a little while to figure it out, and then eventually we started Internet of Elephants, and I haven't looked back.
Okay, so kids and teens spend over 7 hours a day on their phones and on devices. So it looks to me that you give us something good to look at. Can you explain your games and how they inspire teens to take action to save wildlife in wild spaces?
Yeah, sure. 7 hours, huh? I didn't know it was that much. I don't think you should
Yeah.
spend 7 hours. Yeah. But if you're going to, you might as well be looking at wildlife content, right? Here's the thing: like every single game that we make isn't telling you what to do. right? I mean, if you play our products, we're not telling you, okay, now you should go do this, now you should go do something different, et cetera, et cetera. But what we want is that if you are going to spend 7 hours a day on your phone, it's just like I said. I mean, oh, but it would be great if you were spending some of that time engaging with wildlife, engaging with conservation, engaging with with wildlife, with wildlife stories. And I think what that does is it just sort of builds this daily routine or this daily consciousness that you're thinking about animals and you're thinking about wildlife and you're thinking about environment, maybe something that's very close to home or maybe something that's that's 10,000 miles away. And of course you could do that by watching wildlife documentaries, and you could sit in front of a TV and watch a documentary. But people don't do that. They spend 7 hours on their phone. And also, when you're kind of sitting on and watching a documentary, it's amazing. I love watching them, but it's very passive. You're kind of sitting there, you're watching, and then it's over. And the reason that I think games about wildlife, has so much more potential is because you can play, you can be a participant, you can make decisions. You have some agency over over what happens. You can play for a long period of time, and you can really kind of get engaged into this whole world that that I think is a little bit more active and creates kind of bigger opportunities for kids to participate and then want to do something.
Definitely. It really includes the kids more. And now lots of people are playing more now. And I'm sure the gaming business has gone up a lot because lots
Yeah,
of people are at home and gaming now. So that's great.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah, yeah. That's absolutely true.
definitely. Okay. So your games are based on real data. Where do you get
Yeah.
this data from?
So we don't gather any of it, right? Like I don't have anybody on my team that's out with with tracking devices or anything like that. So we create partnerships with either individuals who are tracking or conservation organizations that are that are tracking. So when I first started Internet of Elephants, the first thing I needed to do, I just needed to convince, not necessarily convince, but kind of see who out there would actually share their data with us. I didn't know if people were going to be like, wait a second, I'm not giving you my data. What are you going to do with it? But what we found was that so many people they put their life's work into tracking a sea turtle or putting camera traps out in the middle of of deep jungles or getting audio recordings. And the idea that maybe that data, or stories about that data could be told to the world was really really exciting for people. So I didn't actually have too much trouble. So everything that we do is always in partnership with a wildlife organization or a wildlife researcher or that's doing stuff anyhow. And then we just say like, okay, well, what if we could take that data that you've got and we could turn it into something new.
Yes, that is so cool. I've played your games. They're really cool. I love seeing all the pictures of the animals and how you had to go to the camera traps. It was really cool. Okay, so how do you take your data on animals and convert it into a video game?
Yeah. Well, it all depends on what's the data. Um, but let's take Unseen Empire for example. So Unseen Empire, it's all camera trap data. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to analyze all the data. Like there were 5 million camera trap photos taken. If 4,900,000 of those photographs were of a bearded pig, and then the rest were different animals. I don't know how we're going to make a game out of that. So we've got to kind of look for the things that are interesting in the data. Is there diversity of animals? Is there diversity of geographies? Is there the right level of scarcity and the right level of abundance? To make for an interesting game because we have this rule that we want our games to be based on real data, we also limit ourselves in that we can't just make things the way we want them to be. Like ideally, a clouded leopard shows up 1 out of every 20, but that's perhaps not in the real world. So the first thing we have to do is we have to really, really analyze the data and kind of have an understanding of what it is. Then we look for the trends and the potential storylines. And that's often like GPS data. It's really interesting. Like just by watching dots move around on a screen, you can start to see the types of stories that exist about the life of the animal, about the habitat of the animal. So we then try and extract those stories, because games, at the end of the day, if there's not a good story, it's most likely not going to be, it's most likely not going to be a good game. So we need to have, we need to have a good storyline. And then with that, with that storyline, we think about, like, okay, what are the challenges? What that you have to overcome? Who's the good guy, the protagonist? Who's the bad guy, or the antagonist? If you're doing better, how do you know? What is the skill that you have to master? With this data, all the types of things that would typically go into a game, and then that's where the idea around the game sort of starts to formulate. And then after that, you have to build it. And you have to make it, and that's a lot of work on the data side, and just a lot of work on the coding side. You need to get artists, and you need to get sound people, game designers. Everybody's just kind of come together to create a final product.
Wow. Having you explain what the process is making a game, I didn't know it really took that long and it takes lots of thought. So that's amazing.
I don't come from the games world myself, right? Like, I was in the IT world, and we made business software. And the way you make business software, I mean, technically behind the scenes, you're sort of doing the same thing, you're coding. But the way that you have to think, and the way that you have to bring a lot of things together, and then how you judge success, is completely and totally different in the games world. So I myself had to learn a lot from people that knew a lot more about how games are developed. Otherwise we would never have been able to do it.
I'm sure you learn lots about the game industry. That's
Yeah.
great. Okay, so do your games raise money to help animals, and where does the money go to?
Sure. They don't yet. So some games, when you start out with a game, you've got to know what's your objective, especially if you're trying to make a game about conservation, right? And it's really easy to think, like, I want my game to do everything. I want it to engage people, and I want it to educate, and I want it to raise money, and I want it to do behavior change. And it's really, really easy to kind of fall into that trap. And one of the things that we learned is we got to pick one thing, and then really try and concentrate on it. So the two games that you've probably played, Wilderverse and Unseen Empire, they don't have an objective of raising money. They have an objective of getting people engaged, getting people participating, and education. But the next couple of games that are on my wish list, or the ones that we're trying to get support for and do, they're specifically and directly with the intention of raising money. And the idea is not that they would raise donations, but that in the process of playing, the things that you pay for in the game, or the things that you pay for to do, that we would take a big percentage of everything that somebody's paid and then drive it directly back to the same conservation organizations that we partner with, and that we work with on it. So, if you are providing us data, or you're providing us expertise, et cetera, the idea would be then, okay, yeah, the money just kind of funnels back to those organizations. So that's the intention on some games. Some games, the intention is not necessarily about raising money.
And whenever those new games you're talking about are ready, make sure to let me know, and we'll definitely highlight them on a new episode.
I definitely will, Kate.
Okay, so where can listeners go to download your games?
Sure. Well, there's a bunch of different websites, but if you go to www.internetofelephants.com, you can get the links to Wilderverse, to Unseen Empire, to Safari Central, to a number of the other products that we've created. So that's the one central place you can go to.
Do you have any plans to make more games, and is there a different kind of project that you're working on?
Yeah, so like I said, we absolutely do. So the game, we've done a little prototype of it, and we did it with adults and kids and families. But the game that I'm really trying to get off the ground right now is a game about mimicking animal sounds. And so we're working with a university that's very well, they're very skilled in working with audio, and we can play you a sound. Let's say a gibbon singing, and then we can have you record your own imitation of it, and then we can tell you how close your imitation was to the real gibbon. So we want to create like a little bit of a party game where you can sit around the dining table, and everybody, like Pictionary, and everybody's trying to do their best animal imitations. And again, see, that's using real data. That's using real vocalization data that's being captured in the wild, but then also educating you. And this is one where there is a model where the money can go back to those same conservation organizations. So that's going to be called Howlers and Growlers. And I'm really hoping that it's something that you'll see maybe at the end of this year or at the beginning of next year.
I'll definitely download it when it's out. That sounds really cool. Okay, so do you think kids my age can learn this kind of technology and become part of the solution?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's lots and lots of resources out there for kids to learn coding and for kids to learn games. Like Roblox is a great platform. Tinker, Tynker is another platform. I mean, there's plenty. Even like the major gaming companies or platforms like Unity and such. They have programs that are specifically for kids. So there's really, if you're interested in coding and if you're interested in games, there's lots of things. There's competitions every year. I think absolutely, and we'd love to see it.
Yes, we really do have to learn this technology. I'm learning how to code a little bit right now, and it's really fun.
Super.
Okay, well, that was my last question. Thank you so much for joining us. And everybody, click on the links below for his websites and learning about all of his games, and make sure to play them. They're really fun. Thank you, Gautam, for coming here today.
Great. Thanks so much, Kate.
Let's go! Advocacy has no age limit.